My name is Jenna Calloway, and I am 32 years old. I have been a licensed electrician for 9 years. Not because I stumbled into it, not because I couldn't figure out something else. I tested into an apprenticeship program at 22 with the highest written score in my cohort. I knew what I wanted. I wanted to work with my hands, solve problems that actually mattered, and come home knowing I'd done something real. The lights in your house work because someone like me made sure they would. I have never once been embarrassed by that, until my sister made it clear that I should be. Her name is Paige. She's 29, 3 years younger than me, and she has spent most of her adult life making decisions that prioritize the appearance of success over the reality of it. She works in marketing at a mid-sized firm downtown, drives a car she can't quite afford, and lives in an apartment with exposed brick that she describes to people as industrial chic. I say that without meanness. I say it because it matters to what happened later. It was a Thursday in late October when she called. I was in the middle of running conduit through a partially finished commercial kitchen, a restaurant renovation in the warehouse district, the kind of job that requires you to think 3 steps ahead of yourself at all times. I let it go to voicemail. When I listened to it an hour later, sitting in my truck with a cold cup of coffee, she said she needed to talk to me about Christmas. Her voice had that particular careful quality it gets when she's decided something and is now managing how to tell you. I called her back that evening. She started with small talk, which she never does, and that alone told me the real conversation was coming. She asked about work. I told her the restaurant job was going well, that we were ahead of schedule. She said that was great, that was really great, and then she paused. So listen, she said. About Christmas Eve dinner. We'd done Christmas Eve at my parents' house in Glendale every year since I could remember. My mom's pot roast, my dad's terrible attempts at making eggnog from scratch, the same arguments about board games. It was one of the things about my family I genuinely loved without reservation. I wanted to give you a heads up, Paige continued, because I didn't want it to be weird. I asked her what she meant. Ryan is bringing his family this year. Ryan was her boyfriend of 8 months. I had met him twice. He was pleasant enough, had good posture, worked in finance. His parents are flying in from Connecticut. His dad is a managing partner at his firm, and his mom sits on like 3 nonprofit boards. They have a certain kind of expectation about things. I waited. Mom and Dad think it would be better if you didn't come this year. Just for Christmas Eve. You could come Christmas morning instead, open presents, all of that. I heard what she said. I understood every word. But I sat there in my kitchen and asked her to repeat it anyway, because I needed to hear it twice to believe it. She repeated it. Ryan's family is very particular, she said. And I just think, if they ask what you do, it's going to be a whole thing. You know how these conversations go. They're going to have a certain image in their head, and it might make the dinner uncomfortable. Mom agreed it was probably cleaner this way. Cleaner. That was the word she used. I did not cry. I want to say that clearly. I am not someone who cries easily, and I did not cry that night. What I felt was something quieter and more precise than grief. It was the feeling of something shifting underneath you. The ground you thought was solid, revealing itself to be less stable than you believed. I had always known my sister and I were different. I had never understood until that moment exactly what she thought of me. I said, okay. She seemed surprised. She started to explain again, started to layer justification on top of justification, said she hoped I understood that it wasn't personal, that she valued me, that Christmas morning would still be wonderful. I said okay again and told her I had to go. I hung up and sat at my kitchen table for a long time without moving. My apartment is small, and I have made it exactly what I want it to be. I repainted every room myself. I rewired the entire electrical panel the week I moved in because the previous tenant had done something spectacularly unsafe with a set of outlet extenders. I installed the light fixtures I wanted, the ones my sister once said looked too industrial for a living space. I live alone, and I have never needed anyone to tell me my home was acceptable. I thought about calling my mother. I decided against it. I already knew what she'd say. She'd soften it, reframe it, tell me she just wanted Paige's dinner to go smoothly, that I'd understand once I was in a serious relationship and had to navigate 2 families. I had heard versions of that script before. What nobody in my family knew, what I had been sitting on for 6 weeks, was that I had just passed my master's electrician exam. In my state, that's not a small thing. It's a multi-year process, hundreds of hours of study, a 2-part exam that a lot of people have to take more than once. I had passed it on my first attempt. I had also in the same week submitted paperwork to formally establish my own electrical contracting business. I had one signed contract already, A property developer I'd worked with for years had committed to using me as the primary electrical contractor on a 6-unit residential build starting in February. The numbers on that contract, once I'd reviewed them with an attorney, were more than I had made in any single year of my life. I had planned to announce all of it at Christmas Eve dinner. My mother would have cried. My dad would have given me the look he gives when he's too proud to know what to do with himself. I had imagined that dinner specifically for 6 weeks. They had just uninvited me from it. So I made a decision, the same kind of decision I make on job sites when a plan stops working, and I have to figure out what to do next. I decided to wait. I wanted to see what 5 days would teach them. Christmas Eve came. I stayed home. I put on music and made myself a proper dinner, a pan-roasted chicken thigh with root vegetables, a glass of wine I'd been saving for something. I ate at my kitchen table with the lights on the setting I like, the warm one, the one that took me 3 tries to get right. It wasn't sad. I want to be honest about that. There was a heaviness to it, something that sat in the room with me like weather. But underneath that was something else, a clarity, almost. When you strip away the noise of obligation and expectation, you find out very quickly what actually matters to you and what you were only performing. I did not know what was happening across town in Glendale while I sat in that clarity. I found out later, in pieces, from my mother and from my father, and eventually from Ryan himself, who to his credit called me directly to apologize, which I had not expected. Here is what happened. Ryan's parents arrived at my parents' house at 6 in the evening. His father's name was Ted. His mother's name was Virginia. They were, by every account, perfectly nice people, warm, engaged, the kind of couple who ask genuine questions and remember the answers. Over drinks before dinner, his father asked about the family. My mother talked about my father's work, talked about Paige's marketing job, mentioned briefly that she had another daughter. Virginia asked what the other daughter did. My mother said I was in the trades. An electrician. Virginia's face lit up. Her exact words, as reported to me by my mother, were, "Oh, that's wonderful. Ted, remember I was just saying we cannot find a good electrician to save our life." Ted nodded with the enthusiasm of a man who had recently spent 4 months trying to get a licensed electrician to call him back. Ryan, to his credit, smiled and said nothing, though Paige later described his expression as complicated. Virginia asked how long I'd been doing it. My mother said 9 years. Virginia asked if I had my own business. My mother paused, looked at Paige, and said she thought I might be starting one. Paige, at this point, excused herself to help bring food from the kitchen. Ted asked for my phone number. My mother gave it to him because she did not know any reason not to. After dinner, when the dishes were being cleared and Ryan's parents were talking about their flight home, Virginia turned to my mother and said, genuinely and without any subtext that anyone could detect, that she thought it was remarkable. A woman getting her license and running her own business in the trades. She said she wished she'd been brave enough to do something like that when she was young, something with her hands, something you could point at and say you built it. Paige heard every word of this from the kitchen doorway. The following morning, Christmas morning, I opened the door to find my mother and my sister on the front step. My father was at the curb in the car, which I interpreted correctly as him being supportive of the visit, while also maintaining plausible deniability about its purpose. I let them in. I made coffee, because I was not raised to let people stand in my kitchen without offering them something. My mother started talking almost immediately, the way she does when she's decided that speed is the best approach to a difficult conversation. She explained about Ted and Virginia. She explained what Virginia had said. She looked at Paige. Paige did not look at me for the first few seconds. She looked at her coffee cup, then at the light fixture above my kitchen table. The industrial one she'd told me looked wrong, and then she looked at me. "Mom told me about the business," she said. "And the exam." I had told my mother 3 days earlier, in a quiet phone call the morning after Christmas Eve. I had wanted to tell someone. I had not been ready to perform the announcement I'd planned for Christmas dinner, but I'd needed to say it out loud to another person. I said yes. "Why didn't you tell us?" Paige asked. I thought about that question for a moment. I thought about the most honest answer and whether it was worth saying. "I was going to," I said. At Christmas Eve dinner. The silence that followed that sentence was very complete. My mother made a sound that wasn't quite a word. Paige set her coffee cup down and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. Not guilt exactly. Something more complicated. The look of someone who has spent years constructing a story about the world and has just encountered a fact that doesn't fit anywhere in it. She said, "Jenna, I'm sorry. I waited to see if there was more." She stopped. Start it again. I told myself it was practical, that it would just be easier, that you wouldn't mind that much. I said I had minded. She said she knew that now. She said she thought she'd known it then too, and had told herself a story about it because the truth was uncomfortable. I appreciated that part, the not making excuses. It was more than I had expected from her, and I told her so. My father came in from the car eventually, after about 20 minutes, claiming he'd been looking for parking on a residential street, which was the family fiction we all agreed to accept. He hugged me and told me he was proud of me, that he had always been proud of me, and he said it in the careful, deliberate way he has of saying important things, as though each word is being placed somewhere specific. I thanked him. I told him what it would have meant to hear it 3 days earlier, when I was eating dinner alone. I said it without anger, just as a fact, because facts between people who love each other deserve to be said plainly. He nodded. He understood. Ted called me 2 days after Christmas. Virginia had apparently talked about me the entire flight home. He said they'd been trying to find a licensed master electrician for a renovation project on their property in Connecticut. Full panel upgrade, new wiring for an outbuilding they were converting to a guest house. He asked if I worked across state lines. I told him I was licensed in 3 states and was working on a 4th. He laughed and said he wished he'd met me at dinner. I said I wasn't at dinner. There was a pause. Then he said simply, I heard. I'm sorry about that. He was not obligated to say that. It mattered that he did. We worked out the details over the next 2 weeks. It wasn't the largest job I'd taken on, but it was the kind of referral that opens doors. His firm had a network, his wife sat on boards, and people in those circles talk. 2 months into running my business, I had more incoming inquiries than I could take on alone, which is the specific kind of problem every contractor spends years hoping to have. I have thought a lot, in the months since, about what my sister believed she was doing when she made that call in October. I don't think she was being cruel. I think she was being afraid of the version of her life where the people she needed to impress looked at her family and found something that didn't fit the image she'd been carefully constructing. Fear does strange things to people. It makes them calculate in ways they wouldn't if they stopped to think clearly. What she did not calculate for was that the people she was trying to impress already lived in a world where skilled tradespeople were not a liability. They were a resource. They were, in Virginia's exact words, remarkable. My sister and I are okay now. I want to say that plainly too, because I don't carry this story as a wound. We had a long conversation in January, just the two of us, at a diner near her apartment. She told me things I hadn't known, about the pressure she felt trying to make the relationship work, about the story she'd been telling herself for years about what success was supposed to look like, and how it was supposed to be presented. I told her some things too, about how it felt to have built something real and be asked to hide it, about the particular specific hurt of being told your life is the wrong kind of life, she cried. I drank my coffee. I am not someone who needs an apology to fix me. I needed her to understand what she had done, and she did. That was enough. Ryan's family came back for Easter. Virginia and I exchanged numbers at some point in the evening, and she asked me approximately 45 questions about what it would take to rewire an old house, because she had opinions about an 1890s colonial she and Ted were considering purchasing. My sister watched us from across the table with an expression that was 1 part amusement and 2 parts something I think was genuine relief. After dinner, when Ryan was helping my father carry dishes and Virginia was in the bathroom, Paige came and stood beside me at the kitchen counter. She said, "She likes you better than me," I said. "She respects what I do, that's different." She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "I know, that was the whole conversation. But it was the right one. I still have calluses on my hands. I still come home at the end of long days with the smell of work on me, copper wire and joint compound, and whatever the particular smell is of a building that's been opened up and put back together correctly." I started my business with 1 signed contract and a master electrician license I passed on the first try. By the end of my first year, I had 4 employees and a wait list. My sister tried to make me disappear from a room because she was afraid of what I represented. What I represented turned out to be exactly what the room needed.